of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Call the roll.
Trustee Spurling. Here. Trustee Lee.
Here.
Trustee Heinz. Trustee Youngerman.
Here.
Trustee Marisak.
Here.
And Trustee Bond.
Here.
All right, thank you. We do have a quorum this evening. Move on to public participation. The first item is public comment. It's the 2-minute opportunity for any member of the public that's not on the agenda elsewhere to address the board on any topic.
Yeah. It's your 2 minutes of glory.
I wasn't planning on this. Okay. Okay.
If you can just introduce yourself and then.
Okay, basically, I'm going to probably read you the letter that I had sent into the village.
Okay.
Okay, my name is Edie Johnson, and I'm the manager of the mobile home park on Douglas Avenue. To be very frank, on August 2nd, because of a jaywalking, this is the second incident a resident was killed from our park. And it's the second incident that has happened to someone out there. I'm just gonna go from my mind. We have no sidewalks on our side of the street for people to cross over to get to the other side. Not a majority, but several of the people walk, they ride bikes. They're not driving their cars. They have electric scooters that they have to go, and they have to get across the street to the bank, whatever else they need over there. I am only asking for some sort of, I've talked to Rick, I believe it was, from the village works.
Public Works Department.
Yes. And he said he was going to keep me informed of what was going on with the board and everything and what we can do. And I know it's not going to be something that is going to happen overnight, but I don't want any more incidents from that park because we cannot get across the street. I'm still seeing people jaywalk across the street, and I'm cringing every time I see them. Some of them are moving real slow. We need some way to get across the street, and I'm asking for help.
Thank you.
So,
And if the staff have anything immediately you want to add?
I mean, as staff, we have discussed this and have said we will add it to our sidewalk gap plan that we have. We'll add it in there and, look at the priority of it and
I know
getting it added.
we do have a lot of sections of town that don't have sidewalk, that obviously predate this program, but this seems like a situation where a large amount of pedestrian traffic are getting out of one area and trying to go either across the street or down to Montgomery Road. I looked at it today, there are striped crossings at Montgomery Road, and then if you go north to the next intersection, I know it's not ideal to go down that way, but if we had sidewalk that directly connected them, I would hope that that would encourage folks to go to the intersection. So what we can probably do is look at adding that sidewalk into our program in the future.
I understand that, yes. And I know, and it's something that probably should have been presented a long time ago, because our area is the only area on that side of the street that has to get across the street. You have from Jiffy Lube onto the corner of Montgomery Road. But to walk the curb there, by the curb to get to Jiffy Lube, it's very, very narrow also. And the traffic coming down that street is, I was out on Douglas Road yesterday, Sunday. Stay away from Douglas Road on Sundays. But it was an absolute zoo, and cars were just zooming down there. I didn't see a squad car anyplace. I didn't see nothing to where they even come down, cross over Montgomery Road and jog into that left lane there to try to get over into the left lane. And it just frightens me. I don't know what else to say. I just don't want to see any more accidents over there.
Absolutely.
I mean, two's bad enough, and I sure as heck don't want to see any more, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming in. Jeff or staff or Rick will be in touch with you just to keep you up to date on when we can get that in the program in the future.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is there anybody else for public comment? All right, hearing none, I'll move on to the second item on the agenda, item B, which is Dolores Rodriguez of 220 K Street regarding parking and traffic issues on K Street. Is Dolores here? Okay. We'll move past that. Will somebody reach out to her?
We will, I know the chief has spoken
Okay.
to her, and so that may be why she's not here this evening, but we will reach out to her.
Okay, sounds great. All right, moving on to item C is the recognition of the Montgomery Fest volunteers. With that, I will turn it over to the Fest chairman, Denny Lee.
Thank you, Matt. I got a list of volunteers. I hope we got them all. Debbie gave them to me, and she put the first ones in order were actually our trustees, which I have really happy that all of them have now stepped up and have really done something. Doug Marisek has sponsors, food vendors, and parade. Steve Youngerman took the stage, parade announcer, and almost ran people over with the golf cart, but that's all right. Matt had the beer tent. Teresa had the craft and vendor booths, and Penny Fitzpatrick helped with the parade. And then actually our own employees, Phil, chased people at the carnival and fireworks. That was fun. I was with him on that. Ismail was the police coordinator. Debbie was the overall coordination on publicity. And Brad helped with the talent show. I guess he's an intern. He's so new of an intern, I don't even know him, but hope he did a good job, though, they said. So Melody Smith did the sponsorships, and we came up with enough money to pay for everything, it looks like. Chris Wagner helped with the car show. Megan helped with the village booth. And the Public Works, all the guys worked all 3-4 days, and then before then and afterwards. All these that I just named are all employees. So it worked out well that we kind of put a little bit on each one of them there in the office where you pay your water bill. And the parade there's a little bit of a gap there, which you're going to fix next year, I understand. But anyway, the certificates, I'll start out with Chris Rizzuto. He took our photography. I don't know if he's here or not. I don't see him. And the next one on the list is Joe Gillespie. So I'm going to turn that over to our police chief, Phil.
Thank you, sir, Mr. President. The police department only asked for one person to volunteer for us. The rest of them are all paid employees. So this individual doesn't live in Montgomery, doesn't live in Kane County. But what he does do is he's a director for the Kendall County Emergency Management Association. Now, if you don't know, we ask for a command bus every year to be our operations center. We conduct our briefings there, we conduct our shift call there, and it's invaluable to us as a police department to run our operation. So we get this from an organization. This bus has to be set up, deployed, maintained, and recovered. And that all takes a lot of work. So what I'd like to do is have Joe Gillespie come down here, just get some recognition. I have a nice certificate for him. I'd just like to read it. And it says, for voluntary actions of weekend, August 10th to the 12th, for Montgomery Fest, will serve as director of the Kendall County Emergency Management Agency. Director Gillespie went above and beyond by volunteering countless hours of village of Montgomery by deploying, servicing, and recovering the EMA ILEAS command vehicle. His expertise in the operation vehicle, along with support and guidance provided to Montgomery Police Department, was invaluable. It's credit to himself, the Kendall County Emergency
And the residents that walk by it are all amazed that, you guys in Montgomery didn't pay for that, did you? I know, that was strictly Kendall County, but it's nice to see it because it's impressive. Now we're going on to kind of the volunteers. Public Works, that help the Public Works is Ricky Reichart. I'm going to give him his brother, Tim, who always helps me with the car show. Thank you, Rick. I let the women boss me around all the time, so my wife does, so
That's right.
I'll listen to Teresa. The other one that helped was Larry Essig, who came back to us. He's working at night, he got a job at Walmart, but Larry came back to us after helping us for years. The parade, Mike Hammond, he's the head of our Planning Commission, thank you. And Joe Young and Amy Young, none of them are here. And Louis DiMatteo, I think all these aren't here. Those people have helped us for years. Mike has been the chairman for about 8 to 9 years. And Joseph and his daughter was this big when she started, now she's bigger than him. And they've been doing it for like 8, 9 years too, and you can always count on them doing the parade. I think that's something that I look at the way the other towns, and that is something where we kind of lack, is volunteers that are really want to do things and will show up and they're smart enough to do the jobs. My son is one of the managers of the beer tent out in Elburn, which is 125 kegs, and he gets, the volunteers for the whole Elburn days is 240. Now, those are people that come in in the morning, make coffee, do this and that for all the volunteers and keep it going. And of course, they have the Lions Club, which is the biggest Lions Club in Illinois, and they can draw from that. But we've got to get more volunteers than Mike and Joe, the ones that have done it for 8 or 9 years. Because this is what happened to me back probably about 14 years ago, is all my neighbors said, we're done, Denny. We've done it for 9 years, we're done. And that's when I got all the trustees involved. But I think next year, that's one thing we have to do, is get more people involved. The craft show. Would you like to talk on that, Ms. Teresa?
I only see one of my volunteers here tonight, but I do want to, oh, thank you, just announce their names. And I will say, we did have quite a few people from the Rotary Club volunteering again this year, so we do try to tap into the Rotary Club. Dwayne Tanner helped out, Tom Betzinger, Mary Doherty and her husband Patrick Doherty helped out, Phoenix Buchanan, and also Ben Berjeska who is here, who I think also helped out with the car show. So I think you're getting announced under the car show, but thank you for your help with the breakdown section. I think that was all of my people. Back to you. Oh.
Thank you. Try to keep this short, quicker. Oh, boy, look at all this long list. Car show, Dan Dittman is running for probably, I'd say at least 5 years. He's done a great job. Chris, who works for us, has done a good job in the paperwork. And then the historic committee have helped out on the registration and things like that. Dan gets the judges. We do have one judge here tonight that stepped up and asked to volunteer. And I think it's the first time he judged a car show, but he went with somebody that did it, and he did a great job, I understand, and they loved it. So Ben Baraska. Come up and get your certificate. Thank you, Ben. I guess that's what I mean by having people step up to the plate and from different areas. Let's see, it was Dan Dittman, Steve Maraskas, Jonathan Leahy, Godard Wagner, Bren Wagner, Jennifer Curtin, Robert Coffey, Kimberly Coffey, Albert Torres, Jim Rehack, James Rehack, must be cousins, Polly Curtin, and Dave Buchanan and Chris Shantz, which is Debbie's husband. I don't think anybody, is there any of them here? I don't think so. But we're going to have Debbie mail them all out to everybody. So the last is the HPC, which is the Historic Preservation Committee. I don't think we have a lot here either because my wife didn't make it. She's the president, and she helps with the registration. Gina and Joan Michaels worked the cottage. That was from the old Michaels grocery store. Britt Johnson, Gretchen Countryman, Linda Komiak, John Amon, and Paula. Paula, I got yours here. Thank you, dear. Anybody else that volunteered at the show? I got two more, and these are my carnival hand stampers. When I was out with Armando, the deputy chief, at the night out, I ran into a couple girls, and I thought these girls, after talking to them, would be perfect to stamp at the carnival to let people in. So both of them volunteered, and I got a little closer to both of them because I've talked to them since then, and they're just great people. Can't call them kids because one's over 21. But Lago Guzman, would you come on up, honey? There you go. And then I had Caleb Thompson and Ari Thompson help, stamping too. And then the last one was Ruby. Ruby, I probably mispronounced your name. Aceface? And she did a great job too, and come on up here. And that's it. It's not as long as it was last year. Last year I strung it out way too long. This year was shorter.
This year was spot on.
Can I just take 1 second, Denny? And I just really want to thank Penny for all of the work she did with coordinating and organizing the parade. I'm up there doing some traffic control, and Penny is spot on with organizing it, getting the people lined up, knowing who is where, when, making sure everybody's coming out in order. And it's a lot more to it than those of us that have never been involved knew until I got involved. So again, thank you very much, Penny. I really appreciate it.
I second that. I don't know why this is so far
It's
away.
a joke we play on you, Steve.
Is it? Okay, great. I second that because she let me know who was where and what changes. That way when I announce, I can actually sound intelligent. It's one of those rare times when I actually sound intelligent. But I'd also like to take a moment and thank our new Director of Public Works and our new police chief. I noticed that they were there the whole time. And that does not go unnoticed, so thank you, gentlemen.
couple other things I'd like to call your attention to is the drone footage that we have. This is really another example of our village engineering consultant going above and beyond to help us out here, using the flight of their drone at the parade, and then also kind of getting a good sense of what the actual festival grounds look like, as well as the car show. So really do appreciate that. I know Pete's not here, but you'll pass that along to him. This actually will come in really handy planning stuff in the future. The other thing is that I need to mention is and Denny kind of touched on this with volunteers. So as you can probably mention or understand, that the planning that goes into this festival every year, even though it's in the same location doing a lot of the same stuff that's been going on for 30 years, takes a tremendous amount of effort, not only on the village staff, which they spend weeks before and after, in some cases, prepping for this, which takes a considerable amount of time away from other things, but also executing. So without the volunteers that are in this room, and the staff, the paid staff, and the board members, really would not be able to put this event on. That really planning for next year's event really starts pretty soon. So would also like to acknowledge and thank Marion Bond, who's the president of the Montgomery Foundation, for her efforts in that and with the beer tent. And if anybody else has anything to offer, I would like to get a picture of everybody. But any other comments from the board or staff? Anybody we're forgetting? Okay. If you could come down, if you work on the fest in any way, shape, or form, come on down, let's take a picture.
Okay, good, you're on.
Yep, it is. All day.
All right, we will not be offended if you take off at this point. We do have a meeting to move on with, but you certainly don't have to stick around for the whole thing. But you do have to come back and volunteer next year, so thanks for your help.
Are you Dolores? Dolores? Are you here? We're just, Matt?
Yeah, no, it's fine. So we passed you up in the agenda, but we're happy to go back. Shar, if that's all right?
That's okay.
Real quick.
Hello, Village Hall. My name is Dolores Rodriguez. I live at 220 K Street here in Montgomery, and I want to talk about the congested residential streets at the 220 K Street area. I've been there since 1998, and it's increasingly becoming worse and worse and worse. The garbage trucks come by, the buses come by, and we're talking about Main Street and K Street and River Street. And you know that there's a curve just like this, and obviously people have ran through it and crashed into it and crashed into trees. Maybe we need to put a sign up there, a curve coming up, I'm not sure. But we're going to talk about the garbage truck, the buses, the cars, and sometimes we have to wait. The buses have to wait, they have to come into a certain kind of angle in order to get across. They have to wait for the garbage truck. It's just unbelievable. I do have a few pictures of just today's that I wanted to show, but I don't know how to get them on the screen.
Can I say a word? Can I say a word? What she's speaking of the garbage is, we have to put our garbage right on our driveways, because the people that work across the street at the old Anchor Brush Factory use the whole street for parking. And the garbage men have to get out of their trucks, where in the contract, that's why we got garbage cheaper, is so they could just boom, and then drive to the next guy. So that's what she's talking about, the garbage, we have to move it, and it's an inconvenience for us to put it out the night, and then they have to move it first thing in the morning, take our cars out, and then put it back.
So the other thing is that those long bed trucks still come by, and they're parking up against the trees, and the forklifts come out to get the things that they need. My observation, I live there, I'm retired, so I'm drinking my coffee and I look out the window, I see this every day
They're loading and unloading in
in
the street,
So,
blocking school buses and,
Yes.
and traffic.
and the garbage man, the noise that comes from that building, I've actually, we told them if they didn't stop doing it, we would call the police, because it was a noise ordinance. In fact, I had Mike from the Village of Montgomery come over, and there was some big noise that was there also. So there's been some problems. I did talk to Mike Douglas, who owns the building. He's never returned my call back. You had asked me if he had called, and I said he had not answered back. So obviously, they have to make their music louder because their machines that they use are loud, and it's just not working. So we need to take care of that. So these people keep blocking, they also block my neighbors who happen to be here. They block them. They live where they have to park the car in the driveway, and they come up so close that they're actually in the driveway. So when he has to get out, he doesn't have much to back up to get out. So they can't do that.
Where the curb is cut for the egress
Okay.
onto their
Correct.
driveway, they're actually
So it's a big burden on us
encroaching
people
the
in
driveway.
Yeah.
this residential area. And I've been seeing this getting worse and worse. They come in, they park, they got their music all loud, they wake me up, they're there, I think the place starts opening between 4:30 and 5 o'clock in the morning, and I hear them. I'm awake because I hear the music and talking, and I can't do anything about that myself, but unless I get out there and make a big noise. But I really like to see something done about this. If not, I'm willing to take out a petition and do whatever it is we have to do. People sign it because it's ridiculous. I would like to see a police car just watch it, especially on a Thursday. It's really ugly. Just park there and watch it. And I know you can't see my pictures because you probably don't have, I have no idea how to
We're
show
gonna-
them to you.
We're going to have to put together a presentation, have a meeting with somebody, and with the force here, I've been wanting to talk with Mike. Is it Mike? Who's the street supervisor?
It's ridiculous.
Signs and stuff.
Yeah,
They-
we can, so I would encourage you to email those pictures, just so we have those. It sounds like you've talked to several different
Oh,
departments
yeah,
on this
I've
issue.
talked to,
Yeah.
and yourself, actually. Because we're going to have to put together a presentation. It's going to take longer than 3 minutes
Yeah,
to stand up here, show you guys the pictures that we've got.
Right.
I'm retired also. I live right across the street from the factory.
Okay.
And these people are rude. You flat it, you tell them not to turn around in my brand-new driveway?
okay.
And
And what's your name for the
There
record?
is a whole, I'm sorry, there's a whole front area is blank.
625, or
628 is-
627 South Railroad Street is
Okay.
their address.
And they do all their stuff on.
And they do all their parking
Right.
on
No,
South Main
what's-
Street.
and what's your
My-
name for the
My
record?
address is, my name is Tom Moland, M-O-L-A-N-D, 625 South Main Street.
Okay,
I've been
Okay.
there for 26 years now.
all right. Well, this is something I know different departments have looked into. One question that I had, maybe staff can answer this. I know a few years ago, we approved a special use for the one user that's in there with the baseball. This isn't their parking.
No.
It's-
No, that's, no, their address also is Railroad Street.
Right.
But they use Main Street. And they also, at 10 o'clock at night, all the kids come out, they're all jacked up from being in there, doing the soccer and baseball.
Okay,
They come out, they're screaming and hooting and hollering.
okay,
I've got kids in school,
yeah,
and they wake them up.
right. Well,
I mean,
staff
they're
can
loud.
look into this.
Plus then they go ahead and
Yeah.
do three-point turns in my brand-new driveway.
Right. Staff will look into this and report back to the board on kind of what's going on. I don't want to cut you off, sir,
No,
but we
you
did.
had, I
We did
understand the
pass
3
this up
minutes.
on the agenda, so this is really Dolores' time to speak. But if you want to come to a future meeting, sir, I will let you speak at that meeting. I apologize tonight, but we're.
Oh, no, I'm with Logan.
No, he's talking about, Do you want
Yeah.
him to sign this for another time, or we just have to have him sign?
He can come another time.
I'm
It's
going to
fine.
fill out a paper for next meeting.
Okay.
And
Yeah, and hopefully we'll have some answers as to what we can do and at least make contact with the users before then. So I appreciate it, and we'll be in touch.
no, I appreciate the time.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank
And-
you.
Thank you.
Let me say that we don't really look at petitions, because you put it in front of your neighbor, he's going to sign it. I don't care what it is. People do that. I'm familiar with your problem. Are they parking on K Street or Main
They park
Street?
on Case and Main, they park all in front of
The
their
K,
car.
on both sides of K Street, they're parking.
Yes, sir.
And both sides of
I'd
River
like you to
Street.
park there in the morning. You just come there about 7 in the
The
morning.
guy you're talking about at 5 o'clock.
License of about 10 cars.
Yeah, the guy you're talking to at 5 o'clock
5 o'clock,
wakes me up
4:30
every morning because he comes right at the corner of the stop sign, and I live that block. I live in the 500 block of Main, and I hear him every morning at 5. That's my alarm clock, because I got to get up at 5. But at the same time, they should be just on Main Street. You got a real problem getting around there on the buses and everything else. And you're right, I think they've got a problem unloading. But he cannot get in where you're talking about. His business is cut in half, so he cannot have his guys get in off of Railroad Street.
You know, how about we don't get into debating the issue tonight? Thank
Yeah.
you, sir.
There should be an atrium. It should be divided up.
Thank you.
It is,
I
but
appreciate
it's
it.
not.
Denny, let's not debate it tonight. We'll look at the
done.
facts and we'll get into it. Awesome. All right, move back on. Thank you, Shar, I appreciate that. This is it's not the 2018 update. It's twice a year? Semi-annual update from the MEDC. So appreciate you coming to share with us what you've been working on. And it's all yours.
Before I start with all the Montgomery Fest stuff, I did want to share something that was shared with me and my board just last week. And it was from a gentleman on my board, and he said, you know, Charlene, he said, Montgomery Fest was the highlight of my childhood. And I smiled, and I thought, oh, that's nice. And he said, I'm serious, he said. He said all the kids in the neighborhood would save their nickels and their pennies and their quarters. And he said at the time, he said there was just a Ferris wheel on the VFW hall, you know, in the parking lot. And he said, we would take all our money and we would run to that Ferris wheel and we'd ride it all weekend. And I just thought that was just the sweetest thing. It gave me goosebumps. And he is a board member, and I was so happy that he shared that. And I would also just throw out there, we have a lot of awesome companies in Montgomery, and I bet you we could tap into that pool and ask for a few volunteers for Montgomery Fest. So I know when I did the cleanups, and a lot of them have community days, just a thought, and I'd be happy to help you with that. Okay, so I can move forward. Most of you know who I am, Charlene Coulam Fiore. I run the Montgomery Development Corporation, and this is the first time I am here without Dr. Neil Schlupp. He is in Florida looking at condos. So lucky him, is hoping to retire in the next 6 months. He keeps saying that every 6 months, but that's okay. So today, I want to do a recap, and it should say 2018. I don't know if the old presentation did. I'll move on. That's okay. So I want to talk about what we do. I want to talk about what's happened since my last time here. And I want to talk and hit a little bit on change, because we've been through a lot of changes, and then, of course, moving forward. Now, that's just a chart. At one time, I used to have it going around with the different things, the different departments, and how things would evolve in development. Here, what I did was I put our priorities, because I wanted to highlight the main economic development activities that the MEDC works with the village on. So change. You can't go backwards, but you can start where you are and you can change the ending. I just picked a few quotes. I really like the one by Socrates. The secret of change is to focus all your energy not fighting on the old, but building on the new. Now this, to me, is a very good example of change. When Gusto first came to Montgomery, they were a small family-run business. When they sold their business to Butterball, they had about 220 employees. After 5 years, Butterball served the community. By the time they left, they had 660 employees. I don't know all the numbers as far as what they put in, but they did do a lot of investment, and it all started with Gusto, moved to Butterball, and I know in the last permit, Carl Buttig put about $6 million into their second expansion. The other thing that I think is exciting about change is you never know what's coming. In this case, we went from a small business into a national known company, and then again into 3 companies. And that company and that building still has plenty room to grow. So yeah, things do change. Now this one, again, today I saw something in the paper that kind of upset me. Apparently, the Beacon News didn't get the memo, but Caterpillar's not leaving till the end of next year. And over the last 12 to 18 months, we've had a task force and we've had an interest in the CAT site. I put a couple ideas down there. Those are actually clients and different development projects that we're looking at the Caterpillar site, from farming and green energy. The state also received some RFPs, and then technology and a data center is really hot right now. So again, the Caterpillar sale is apparently on hold. They said they have some more things to fulfill. So that being said, we gained another year. Another thing that I just want to mention when it comes to Caterpillar, when you live in the area and everybody has to know a bunch of people from Caterpillar. And the point is, it's how you approach that change. And I've had several people who left before they actually closed. And they said, Char, I don't work as hard as I used to. I get paid more, and I'm a pretty happy camper. So again, sometimes you could sit there and you could be sorry. You could embrace the change with the added 12 months, or you could find something new and move along. That's the point I wanted to make. And then there's VVF. And again, more changes, but when they made the announcement, I want to say earlier this year, we got on it right away. I've had at least 4 or 5 people visit the site, although the newspaper said, again, the Beacon News said that it was going to be a cold, dark building and 220 people will be losing their jobs. There's actually 220 square feet that will be utilized still, which is about half the building. And about 60 employees will still stay. So I talked to the management there today because I didn't know if my head had the wrong numbers or what. But again, I have guys who wanted to retire 5 years ago, and they're like finally happy that they can finally retire. There are other people that maybe should go look at Caterpillar. And then there are those who have made their living, are very happy, and we can move on. The other option is if we can try to find a way to fill that building, but it's very difficult because you have to understand that building is made to build and manufacture soap. So we could either knock it down and then build another building for the staff that's there. So there's a couple options we have, but what I wanted everyone to know is that we've been on it, and they have some opportunities. They've gotten some offers, at least on the railroad side. And there are other companies that are interested. So that being said, we're still up for some more changes. Baseline, which Fox River Foods, wait, I just need 1 second here. I talk too much, I know. I'll try to move on, but Performance Foods are going to actually expand in their building. They're probably going to vacate the Lake Street property. However, it hasn't been approved by corporate. So that is not necessarily something we'd want to see in the newspaper, but I guess I said it, so there you have it. But that means that we could have another occupant in that building. There's also another business on Lake Street that might be changing. Again, a good thing is that Performance is going to change the way they enter and exit their building. They're looking to improve the way that traffic runs. Again, a positive change. We've had some changes on the board. As I mentioned earlier, Dr. Neal sold his practice. Eventually, he plans to retire. And I'd rather not look so much at who we lost as much as I would like to look at how the changes that were replaced. So Wabanzi stayed on board. There were just some changes within their organization, and Suzette Murray has just been awesome. I took her on a Montgomery tour. She had no idea the size of Montgomery or our boundaries, which is great. Sometimes it's nice to educate people. We added Old Dominion. They brought in 9 foursomes so far for my golf outing. I'm up to 94 golfers. So Butterball, hopefully we can get Buttig on the MEDC board, but we did add Performance Food. And I spent probably 6 or 7 years trying to get Fox River on the board. And then we lost Mark Baum, but we got Fox Metro. So again, we've been working hard on getting new faces, new blood, new people to represent, and I think they represent the region and the community very well. There's a lot of different voices there, and they've been a big help and a big change to what we've had. Now, here's some positive change as we look downtown. I think what's exciting about these two businesses, not only do they share one building, which then reduces their cost and their overhead, they actually are specialty items. So it's not a taco place. It's not another taco place. And what's that burrito place called? No, it's a specialty shop, and it has food from Argentina, empanadas, and they're stuffed with meat and they're light, and the only thing is they're working on their hours. In addition to that, they have a food truck and a following. They've been around for 11 years. The lady and the cookies are actually macaroons, very sweet, just unbelievable. Not good if you have diabetes, but nice gifts. She packages everything really well. She also has a following, again, helping her be successful, and she does catering as well. This one, I think earlier you mentioned the couple who had the butcher store, Michael's. Sweet couple. They worked with this family, and they just totally gutted that place. And the other thing that's really exciting is they changed lives by teaching males and females how to do nails, how to do hair. There's barbers in there. There's a classroom in there. It's really pretty. I know that the week of the opening, she already had 89 enrollees, and she said that the classes went for 18 months. So you're talking about 90 people coming downtown, you know, for 18 months. And that, of course, will grow, and it's something we should be proud of. And I think eventually they want to buy that entire building. Again, another exciting project. Actually, this company is exciting. They have a history. Just this past weekend, they celebrated their 60th year anniversary. The grand opening, which you see pictured in the lower left, the new building is above that, and then the ribbon cutting. And again, as I mentioned last Saturday, there was a huge 60th anniversary. It was unbelievable how many people there were there. So it was nice. They had a band and bouncy houses and raffles and ice cream and hot dogs. It was nice. But 60 years, they have 3 offices in Montgomery. And 4 buildings, actually. Okay, so here's some things that will not change. And one is the golf outing. And it's September 13th, and as I mentioned, we have 94 registered golfers. And in the card is John from Poor Boys, and lower you see Brian Dolan. But what's important about this outing is really about the relationships that build. And I'm sorry Doug left, because he was so excited. Last year he served and worked and helped me sell tickets. And through several relationships, including meeting some people from Mozinga, he was able to then call him up on the phone and say, hey, would you help out with this? Would you do this? And again, that's how everyone gets to meet everybody else. I know that getting to know somebody and have them answer the phone is really important, and getting them to know that as a trustee or an elected official that their business is important to you, it means a lot. And communication is also very huge, especially between each other. And the appreciation party, I think we're doing that the first Thursday in December. And again, I think I mentioned this last time, where Planet Fitness was expanding and Old Dominion was able to pick up all their equipment. And again, that's just about people using Montgomery business and helping them grow. And that's one of the things that we do very well, and we want you all to do it with us, as most of you have. But again, I just bring that up because the golf outing's coming. And I don't have any of your names on my list. I know everybody's busy and it's really hard, but let's move on. So again, we're not going to change showcasing Montgomery. We are having the bus tour. I have the date as October 11th, and I work with community development. Rich and Jared are always a big help. We tour both retail, land, and industrial buildings. We probably will go in 2001 Baseline and some small buildings over off of Rochester Drive. We have about 4 small openings there that nobody really knows about. And I've been working with the Duquesne Group who purchased that property. And again, that's another change that most people don't know about. But when people come in and invest in Montgomery, that helps the community grow, and it helps improve the property values and all the values and name recognition. We'll also continue ICSE. I just recently went to a retail event that we get a big book and we can reach out to all the retailers. Then in October, there's a deal-making show where you actually get to talk to them. And then I do still do some listings and advertising, but it's very minimal. We took a big hit with the loss of Montgomery, the two businesses. We need to try to find a way to raise that $10,000, or at least some of it, to help with additional advertising and additional efforts. So we kind of work with what we can do that's free, or we negotiate. We've had a lot of increase in not only the website and the Facebook page. I did completely redesign the newsletter so it kind of mirrors the website. It also gives us the opportunity to highlight our executive partners and the opportunity to advertise the businesses that we have in Montgomery, and I think it just looks a lot more professional than it previously did. I hope to continue partnerships. This was one that was done with Country Financial. We also work with Kane County, Kendall County, the college, and the Workforce Group. The Workforce Group was very helpful in helping Buddig, and I have been talking to Wabanzi and a few other businesses about how Wabanzi could help them. David Howard called me 3 times in the last week. I think that's kind of interesting. So he seems to be interested in finding some tenants for Ogden Hill. There's been some activity, obviously, with the new apartment complex breaking ground. We've also had, I actually need to get a call into our assisted living group. I thought they had closed on the property, and they should be starting, hopefully, next year. They're doing 84 at one time, so I know I'm just one call of 83. So hopefully there'll be continued growth in the TIF district. We've had a lot of people look. We just haven't really had anybody make an offer or submit plans or ideas that we've moved forward with. We'll also continue to reach out to hotels, conference centers, and additional retail. So I want to thank everybody, and I appreciate everybody who works with the MEDC. Your support is crucial. I thank the staff and administration, the residents, the partners, and I do thank the media. Most of you are awesome. You're all awesome. I was just so upset when I read this doom gloom on the paper, and the information was just so inaccurate, but I guess that's how they sell papers, so.
All right.
Are there any questions?
I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
I'm asked at least daily by numerous residents what we're doing to attract retail and commercial. I've got 10,000 residents on the west side that still have very little. They want a sit-down restaurant. They want a grocery store. I think they want everything. What are we doing? Status quo anymore doesn't work for me. We've got to continue to move forward. We've got to continue to push for commercial and retail development. What are we doing, or what is the MEDC doing to try and secure that? Because we're competing with Yorkville and Oswego and Sugar Grove, and what are we doing to help secure that?
Well, there's a couple things that we're doing. I do private tours. Rich has worked with me, and we've brought different people into the community, but we cannot control the cost of the land or what the residents are going to say if somebody tries to build something somewhere. So I'm not quite sure what you mean when you say status quo. We make phone calls. We go to events. We call brokers. Brokers call us. We try to find fits that will work on a parcel and hopefully at a price that could help support that business. So there's a combination of things. Sometimes it's timing, sometimes it's the cost of the land, it could be an easement. I think that when people ask you what they want, or they tell you, I should say, what they want, let's find out where they want it and what we can do to focus on that parcel. Because I'm not quite sure what status quo means. All I know is we're very aggressive, assertive, borderline aggressive, I would say, and there's only so much we can do with what's available. As I mentioned, David Howitt, and you should know some of this, we had a developer who called him on a weekly basis, and he didn't return calls. And they kept asking for an offer. Well, people want to know, what's the price of that land? After people don't return calls, or you're asked to sign documents and then nobody responds, then we have to move on. You know, or we have to do something. That's why I was really curious with David. Now, I call him a lot, but this is the third time he's called me. And again, you know, I'm willing to give him prospects, but he has to give them an occupancy date or a delivery date, or at least a price per square foot. Otherwise, there's nothing we can do.
All right, thank you, Shar.
Did I
Appreciate
answer
it.
that okay?
Perfect.
Yeah, that's fine. And what I meant by the term status quo is we can't stay the same. We've got to continue to try to increase development and increase our commercial and retail tax base and those sorts of things all the time. If there are opportunities, I think, all over the village that I don't know if we're truly taking full advantage of. So that's what I mean by status quo. We have to continue to push.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. And the one comment that I would make, as well as, and I think David Howitt has been a good partner with the village on several deals in the past, and the press, frankly, has been very fair in reporting what's going on in the village. I feel like I need to say that. But also that the residential stuff that we're set to approve tonight of building out a defunct subdivision, one of the things that we focus on, and we've asked our staff to focus on, is working with potential buyers to bring people in to move some of those roadblocks. You know, Rich probably doesn't say this as much publicly, but putting together the apartment deal was something that not every director of community development would have spent so much time orchestrating between 4 or 5 different entities to put that together. And that's a huge win for that side of town with some apartments out there. Then we don't have apartments otherwise in the village. So I think, you know, the community development department has been very helpful in that effort as well, and also the MEDC. So I felt like I should state that for the record. All right, with that, we'll move on. We have item E, which is a public hearing on the Comcast franchise agreement. And I'll open the public hearing. Is there any member of the public that's here? Hopefully, I didn't require that you wait an hour to say your piece on the Comcast agreement. All right, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing and we'll move on. The consent agenda, I'll read the items and entertain a motion for approval. We have the minutes of the village board meeting of July 23rd, executive session minutes of July 23rd, accounts payable through August 9th, and accounts payable through August 23rd. A request from Bread of Life Outreach Program, Inc. To conduct tag days, October 12th and 13th of this year. And then ordinance 1818 authorizing execution and adoption of a cable television franchise renewal agreement with Comcast of Illinois, and this is second reading.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
And Trustee Youngerman?
Yay.
That carries 5-0. Moving on, items for separate action. The first one, we have a recommendation of Plan Commission of PC 2018-017Z. This is a text amendment to sections 4 and 12 of the zoning ordinance regarding fees and deposits. And the second item, B, is the ordinance approving that, which we're having first reading, so we'll discuss those at the same time. Director Young.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you mentioned, the Plan Commission did recommend approval of this. It's basically a cleanup item to codify fees and deposits that are identified in different portions of our municipal code and in the zoning ordinance. You might recall that earlier this year, the board approved a new ordinance that dealt with all of our fees and deposits in one location within our code. So we're cleaning up the zoning ordinance in terms of reference to fees because it's already covered in a different location. So this affects nuisance deposits, temporary uses, code enforcement type items, and is basically a codification and a cleanup of those items.
All right. Comments from the board or questions? We're not taking action on the second item, but we will on the first, on the recommendation today. Is there a motion?
Motion to accept the recommendation of Planning Commission?
And that's item A. Is there a second?
Second?
Call the roll.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
And Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
That carries 5-0. Thank you. Is there, can we put item B on consent for a future meeting? Any objection to that? Okay. Thank you, Rich. Moving on to item C, we have ordinance 1822. This is approving execution of a third amendment to the annexation agreement for the Belle Marais subdivision. This is waiver of first and passage on the second. Director Young.
Thank you. At your last meeting, we had a public hearing for the annexation agreement to Belle Marais. At that time, we identified some things within the amendment itself, specifically related to the elevations and some of the design standards for the individual units, which the board basically supported what had been submitted on the part of the applicant. There were a couple questions that I've highlighted in your cover for this item tonight regarding the type of mailbox. I think we've answered that question in the report, and it's it's not similar, it's the exact mailbox that was put in with the homes that have gone in Belle Marais, and it's a black aluminum post and aluminum support arm with a black aluminum mailbox that will be part of any future development that goes on. So that's established out in the subdivision now. It's not the same type of mailbox that we had some situations with in Foxmore and Fairfield Way over the wintertime. So I feel confident that this represents the standard that the board had hoped to impose. The other question was regarding landscape standards for the individual lots. I've identified what's in the code now, or not in the code, what's in the annexation agreement itself for the existing homes, and that will be continued in terms of landscaping in the front yard, trees, shrub options, and then a seeding of the rear yard, sod in the front and the sides. So I think that identifies a continuation of the program that's already in place for Belle Marais. And then the third was to double check what the tap fee for water is. The tap fee, as indicated in the exhibit for fees, is the current standard for tap fees within the village, and that was identified at the time of the original annexation agreement. So I think those answers the questions that you had last time, and we'd recommend that you go ahead and approve this annexation agreement amendment subject to attorney review. We're still cleaning up a few of the exhibit items, the legal description, because it's kind of choppy. There's lots within the subdivision that it doesn't just incorporate the entire subdivision plat. So things like that are being cleaned up now, and they're ready to go. They already have building plans in for their first model that they want to get under construction this fall. So this is an example of cleaning up the last, if you will, busted subdivision from the housing downturn, which is exciting. And then we've already had some inquiries about some raw dirt in the general vicinity along Dixon Road as well for future residential development. So that's an exciting thing for rooftops and putting more pressure on the need for commercial.
And it's amazing that 10 years has passed, you know, the timeline, and built out that far. So really excited to work with Ryan Holmes on the project, and I know that the residents in Belle Marais are very excited to have this subdivision finally built out and have some more neighbors out there, so.
I would just like to say that the applicant was very proactive in meeting with the residents out in Belmarais, and they were enthusiastically accepted in terms of them coming forward with a finish out of the subdivision. So I think that's a positive for those folks that have already been out there and living in a busted subdivision.
Yep, absolutely. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Motion to approve ordinance 1822, subject to attorney review?
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
And Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
And that carries 5-0. Thank you. All right. Moving on to item D, we have ordinance 1820, accepting land from Montgomery Properties LLC. Again, waiver of first and passage on the second. Director Young?
Thank you. This is also a cleanup item from the annexation agreement and amendment for Ogden Hill that was approved earlier this year. As Shar mentioned tonight, we're already under construction with the apartment development, which we're all excited about. But as a part of that annexation agreement, the village was able to acquire some additional property for recreational open space. It's primarily floodplain property that runs along the Wabansie Creek behind the library, and gives us the opportunity, hopefully in the future, to take some of the high and dry floodplain and do a path system that would connect 30 and the sidewalk and path along Route 30 to, we get just very close to where we could connect to the Virgil Gilman Trail up near Hill Street. So it's a great piece to have. It has no development potential, but it has some nice linkage potential for our overall path and sidewalk system. So this is acceptance of that dedication of that property.
Thank you. Questions? Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Call the roll.
Youngerman. Yes. Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
And Trustee Lee.
Yes.
That carries 5-0. Thank you. Thanks, Rich.
Thank you.
Moving on to item E, we have a resolution 2018-014, authorizing execution of a memo of understanding with CMAP LTA grant, or for the CMAP LTA grant. Fine.
As I indicated in the cover report, this is the kickoff, really, of what'll be probably about a 2-year process to rewrite our zoning ordinance and our subdivision regs, hopefully to get them in shape for the next wave of development that we see on the horizon. So for a number of years, we've been using kind of piecemealed subdivision regulations that have incorporated current standards as policy, but we need to incorporate these into a new subdivision ordinance itself. We applied last year for a CMAP, Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning Assistance Grant for staff on the CMAP staff to help us to generate these documents, both the subregs and the zoning ordinance. So we were lucky enough to receive that grant. We had a minimum participation match. So the majority of the funds for this is coming from CMAP, which is outstanding. And there will be staff participation in this, as well as a task force that we're forming now. And I've asked the village board and the plan commission to identify some folks that we would like to have on the task force. So I'm still looking for suggestions on individuals, residents, business owners that might be willing to give some time and be a part of this process. So much like what the village went through about 5-6 years ago with the comprehensive plan update. So it'll be very similar to that. The process is a little bit drawn out and long, but we want some public participation and definitely some professional participation. So this is the letter of understanding of moving forward with CMAP, and we recommend that you approve this.
Awesome. Any questions? You know, one thing that I should mention is these LTA projects that CMAP awards, there's probably every year or so they go have a call for projects, and there's probably hundreds of applicants of municipalities and that apply for these. And this is really putting the firepower and the work from CMAP here working for our village to help us revamp our codes. I did want to say that I ran into a state employee recently who wanted to commend us on our landscape ordinance. It was very finely written. It's probably one of the more strange positive comments that I've gotten, but I thought I'd pass that along to you. So at any rate, with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
And Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Thank you.
That carries 5-0. Thank you. All right, item F this evening is the Aurora University Spartan Athletic Field Performance Bond Reduction.
That's mine.
Go ahead.
Thank you. As mentioned, this is Aurora University's first phase of completion. As you are well aware, they've completed 2 of their proposed fields, both a soccer and lacrosse field and a softball field, and the associated structures that go along with that, including parking areas and some stormwater management. We're still working to clean up a few minor items on the stormwater management. For instance, there's a field tile that runs through this property that is part of the overall drainage for the area that we're having an inspection done, or they're having an inspection done and evaluation of the need possibly for some repairs there. But the bottom line is that they've requested a letter of credit reduction, or I'm sorry, a bond reduction, and through EEI and their evaluation, we recommend that bond be taken down to $184,872.74. That represents 10% of the bond, which should be more than enough to deal with any of the items that need to still be finished up. And in order to move forward with their second phase, I'd like to see this bond reduced. So we recommend approval, and EEI has evaluated the numbers.
Awesome. I'm a little reluctant to be reducing a bond when there's still potentially stormwater issues. I know that we had a number of residents that were out here, speaking to that, and I know that I've spoken with folks at the university, Dr. Sherrick, specifically about this, that they're very cognizant that they want to make sure that they didn't do anything wrong here, that they're helping folks out. Can you kind of touch base on that stormwater issue, if that's the one that you're talking about?
Yeah, there's a couple parts to this, and actually Pete could do a better job of explaining it, but there is a stormwater management facility that goes along with the first phase that has been constructed and has been modified after there was some situations with some adjacent flooding to the west in the county subdivision. That has been modified, and there has been as-built submitted so that we verified that the work that needed to be done on that detention facility has been completed. What I'm talking about in terms of what we believe will be some need for some repairs to the field tile, which actually runs more to the to the southeast towards the fishing club. I can't think of the name of it now.
Lucky 50.
Lucky 50, thank you. So it runs away from where the stormwater challenges have been up against the county subdivision on the west side of their park, their west central side of their park. So Tim at EEI has looked at those numbers, and we feel that this is more than adequate to complete those improvements when and if they're needed. So I'm confident that we have the funds to do what needs to be done if Aurora University doesn't perform.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions?
Are we taking action on this tonight?
The reduction of their bond? Mm-hmm. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Call the roll, sorry.
Trustee Youngerman. Yes. Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
And Trustee Lee.
Yes.
That carries 5-0. Thank you. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
Item G tonight, we have a change order for the 2017 MFT and Infrastructure Road Program. Turn over to our Director of Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. President. Presented before you is a change order that we're requesting for the 2017 MFT and Infrastructure Road Program. As you can see, there was an increase to the actual contract amount for $31,166.30, which is about a 1.23 increase. Some of the reasons behind this change order, one, as you're in the field, you get some more accurate measurements when you're out there with the field staff and compared to going off the design phase documents. There was also a lot of patching that was added to this program that was not included in the water main portion up in the Boulder Hill subdivision because the prices were much cheaper with builders than what we received in that water main bid. There was actually some asphalt driveways on Lincoln and Sherman. These were paid for by the residents. And then there was some damaged curb along Griffin Road. There is some, they're talking about it using $8,200 to be paid out of the water fund. There was some reimbursements from the residents with the asphalt driveways for 1946. Again, even with the final change order, the 2017 program is going to come in under budget by 11%. We need to get this submitted to IDOT for their approval, and I'm asking you for your approval on this change order as well. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them now.
Thank you. Any comments, questions? Motion?
Motion to approve, change order?
Call the roll.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Lee? And Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
And that carries 5-0. Thank you. Item H this evening is an agreement with KenCom for Montgomery data conversion. I'll turn it over to Chief Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. Everyone here should know that KenCom does our emergency dispatch. They're in a process of implementing a change of their software to a records management in CAD that's different from what they use now. We've already paid for that. Part of that implementation did not include the migration of all our data, which for the past 5 years, we've been collecting data for our records management system, police reports, photographs, and all the good stuff. Well, what we have to do is we have to convert and transfer that data to the new platform. It's expensive, to the tune of $27,240. So we're sitting down at a meeting, and if you don't know, we share our data with North Aurora. So I approached the North Aurora Police Department Chief Dave Fisher and asked if they wouldn't mind a cost-sharing project. And they agreed to it. As a matter of fact, they passed it on the 6th at their board meeting. And as of today, we received a check for $13,620 from the Village of North Aurora. So I'd like to amend that and ask that we approve the purchase of this for $13,620. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions about it.
I'd just like to say thank you for spotting an opportunity like that and working that out. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Likewise.
I agree.
Motion to approve?
I'll second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Are we amending it to 13,620? Okay. All right. Call the roll.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman?
Yes.
And Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
That carries 5-0. Thank you, Chief. Item I this evening is ordinance 1825. This is ratifying the purchase and acquisition of land within the Village of Montgomery. This is 310 North River Street, waiver first and passage on the second reading. And I'll ask Attorney Anderson to summarize.
Thank you. This is part of the process, and I would certainly characterize it as a cleanup aspect of the process for purchasing property. A quick overview of how the village does this in order to ensure that the taxpayers are not paying more than they should is when the village determines that it's going to purchase some property, we obviously go into executive session to decide whether or not you wish to do that, or a majority of you wish to do that. If we receive direction from you that that is indeed the case, we go ahead as our law firm and negotiate to attempt to get the property for the price that you've determined that we should purchase it for. We do that, though, in a beneficial trust so that it's not immediately identifiable that the village is doing it, because typically when the village's name is outed, the price goes up. So we lock in the contract, if you will. Once we lock in the contract, then typically we'll bring an ordinance like this for approval. It's more perfunctory than anything at that point because we've already committed. In other words, we have signed the contracts on your behalf because of the direction in executive session. But since the board cannot actually take action in executive session, we need to ratify it, so to speak. Normally, we get to that point before the actual closing occurs, but regardless, we are bound by that point. This time, the closing went so quickly, and we were able to arrange the acquisition of the property so quickly, we didn't get time to get it on an agenda. So we closed because we knew you wanted it, and we were contractually bound for it, but we still need to pass the ordinance, and that's why we call it a ratification in this case instead of an approval. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions?
No? Motion to approve ordinance 1825?
Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Bond?
No.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
And Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
And that carries 4-1. Thank you. Moving on to item J this evening, we have ordinance 1817, amending the village code regarding water regulations in and out of the village, and this is second reading. And this is Michelle's shining moment with us here this evening. So with that, you want to kick this off?
I
All right.
will. We do have it on for second reading, as you see. That doesn't mean that you have to take action on it tonight. Just since we had first reading last time, that's our process, is to follow up with second reading. If you do come to a determination on rate option tonight, then you can approve it. If not, we can table it till a further meeting. Everything is the same as you saw it last time in the ordinance, except we took out the blank where the rate option was so that you could discuss it and figure out what you want there. Some things you guys had asked for last time, you'd asked for detail of what that transfer amount was. We have provided that information. Basically, it's expenses that are handled in the general fund, but a portion is reimbursed from the water fund because things like our insurance, payroll, HR are all budgeted and paid for in the general fund, but obviously some of that is for the water fund. So that's what the transfers are. We did provide that detail. One of the other questions we got was why we'd only supplied one option for alternate water supply, the 5.5%. So what we did is we showed for the alternate water supply the same options we showed for the non, and I can pull that up for you here. You can see, so what we've got, option one, not considering alternate water supply, was continuing the 3% annual increase. Then we ran the same thing for the alternate water supply, and what you can see is that option does not generate the cash we need. You can see how the green line's going the wrong direction there towards the end. We did the same thing with option two, the 3.5% increase, and we did it for option three, which was the 4% increase. And you can see for the alternate water supply, that doesn't work. Now, we did add one other option if you want to consider for the alternate water supply, which is the top one here, 4A, which is a 6.5% annual increase through 2026, and it would be 3% after that. And then the one below is the one we presented last time, 5A, which is 5.5% annual increase through 2033, and then 2%. Obviously, there are an infinite number of iterations we could give you on this. We tried to come up with some that we felt worked, but I guess we're as easy to handle as possible with the rate increases. One of the other questions we got was if you select an alternate water supply option, would that money be earmarked specifically for this? And I guess the answer is yes and no. What we looked at was all the expenses going forward. That's the alternate water supply, ongoing operations, and any other major capital projects, and figured out how much cash we would need throughout the years. We're not gathering, $40 million for alternate water supply out of this and doing that. We'll issue debt for that, but we need to make sure we generate enough revenue to pay back the debt payments. So you'll see here, the cash rises, and then as we start to pay, it goes back down. So it's all going into the water fund, so technically it's earmarked for water purposes. It's not strictly just for the alternate water supply, because obviously there are existing costs that we have, maintenance of our, like, water tanks and all of that. The reason staff put the 5.5% in last time is because we feel it's a good option to think about the alternate water supply. At some point, we will be moving to an alternate water supply, whether that's Lake Michigan, the river, we'll be moving to some supply, and the longer we wait to take that into consideration, the bigger that jump will be. So the 5.5% now, if we wait 5 years, 10 years, that's now a bigger number if we just continue doing the 3%. So that's why we recommended that, but obviously this is a policy decision, so whatever the board pleases. Michelle and Justin and I are happy to answer any questions you have.
Awesome. All right, questions from the board?
I have, my first question, I guess, is for trustee Bond. I'm aware of the question, the conversations that we had. Were the answers that you were given suitable for the questions that you'd posed?
I had several exchanges with Director Van Voren, both email and by phone, and he was very responsive to my questions. We dug into this very deeply. I think we did identify some opportunities looking ahead for conservation of expenditure, but they didn't rise to the level that would impact our thinking on this plan.
So are you
I'm
okay
very-
with
yeah, I'm at
proceeding?
peace,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Good job, Justin. And I was copied on some of those emails, and there, as you, and you've all seen, there's just so much data that goes into a report like this. Analyzing not only the revenues, but also the expenses that we have, and looking at ways to ratchet that down, just like we've done with our general fund budget and our things over the years. I know that staff is pretty cognizant about doing the same for our water fund, because this is, honestly, the future of our village really depends on having a clean and adequate water source. And so it's something I'm very passionate about, which, Rosa and the kids at home don't generally love me talking about this much, but it's something that's very important. So with that, any other comments or questions from the board? What option are you thinking? Obviously, we have momentum with this report, and I'm sure EEI would love to finalize the report with these numbers in it. So they do need direction on what the future of our rate will look like.
Currently, our average increase is what, like 2%, 2.5%?
3% a year.
Excuse me. So these would be, like, for instance, option 4A is a 6.5%. That's not in addition to the 3.5, it's
So it'd be
total.
an extra
Okay.
3.5, a total of 6.5.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all
I
right.
can read it on here, though.
Yeah. The last slide just shows, if you look at what our rate would be for the different options versus what our surrounding communities are charging, so. I can.
It's pretty amazing that if we do option 5A, which is one that I've talked about in the past, because that one really sets us up for the future and doesn't delay making that decision, in 2023, our rate is still lower than all of our comparables are today. So that's nice to see that we have affordable water, that we're watching our expenses moving forward.
And I trust the numbers, but option 4A is a 6.5% increase, then 3% annual rate after 2026. And yet, in fiscal year 2038, we actually have 120,000 less than if we go up 5.5% and then reduce it down to 2%.
Because you're 5.5% for longer, the 6.5 drops down to 3% a lot sooner there.
2026.
Yeah. So you got,
Another question. We mentioned that we can make the gallons on the bill, like the bottom of this chart shows, average usage per house 5,400 gallons. Can we do that 5,400 gallons? Or go to 5,500 gallons instead of going to 6 or 7? Or
We have looked at our software. We can adjust
how we bill it in the future. So that is something we can do. And it would round, depending upon where we want it to round to. If it's 5365, it's going to round to 5400. If it's 5325, it's going to round to 5300, so.
I get that the cost of 1 gallon of water is, a fraction of a dollar. But if, ComEd sends me a bill with exactly how much I used, I know some of our water meters might not be there yet, but we can get them there eventually. I know we're working towards someday in the future having more smart type meters. We can get there, I think. And frankly, I don't know the software or any of that, but I believe that the science is probably there to get us there, so that people can see if they're using the exact amount of water they're using. That seems to be something we can do in the future.
We've always gone to the next 1,000, and if it's 51, the guy pays 6. And this way, I think the consumer would look at it and say, gee, they may have a price increase, but they're getting it down to 500 instead of 1,000 gallons, and it's more accurate. And then I feel a little better, even though they're going to give you a price increase.
Right. We do have a meter replacement program in the budget over a number of years. President Brawley, you are correct that not all of our meters can do that right now. I think we have roughly 1,800 out of the 9,000 meters that we can actually read down to the gallon on right now. So we can do that in the future, but it's going to take a little bit of time to get there.
We're certainly not asking to go out and replace all the rest of those before their useful life, but it's something we can work towards.
And what is the limitation currently? Is it 1,000 gallons is as tight as the ones we have, those additional ones out there?
Yes.
Okay.
You can go to 500 though right now, can't you?
Not right now, no. When you look at, and may be able to get a little bit more information from Director Ratty, but what you're looking at is, in order to change those meters so that they can read like one more digit down, you would have to go and actually reprogram that meter to read one more digit down. Whereas right now, if we're going out and we're touching that meter anyways, we'd probably just want to switch it out.
It sounds like the Y2K problem
Yeah.
with the digit.
Well, a lot of the older meters that we have, they're mechanical dials. And those mechanical dials are set up with how many digits that you can actually read it to. So it's not like having the new iPearls or a new type of a meter that's got a digital or digital reading that now you can actually physically take a device and program that thing, and you can read it to 1,000, to 100, to 10, to a gallon. The only thing that you can't read to a gallon is anything 4 inch and above, because you got to have something, the lowest you'd be able to get to is 10 gallons per, for the reading. But the new ones right now, you really can't do anything with them because they're all still mechanical dials, and they're set from, that's how they were purchased back when they did the last meter change-out program, so.
What is our current program? And I don't mean to put anybody on the spot. Does anybody know what the program is? How many we're scheduled to replace per year?
We're scheduled to replace roughly 600 meters per year. And depending upon the exact number that we have in place right now, it's somewhere between about 12 to 15 years before we'd have all of them done.
What's the cost of one of those meters?
Rough terms, it's about $350.
And I don't think that's going to delay talking about this, because it won't really change I don't think so. I don't think this will change the revenue. But if that's something you could report back to the board just that meter replacement program and
Certainly.
And what I'd like to see is, what is the cost? We're going to raise these rates and get some revenue. Could we escalate that to hit, that we could go to, it'll help us with the monthly, correct?
Correct.
It'll
Yes.
help us with that, it'll help us monitoring our water loss, and it'll help us with being able to give residents a more accurate rate and help justify this increase, if, depending on what those dollars are.
Yeah, currently, we're working on trying to get a propagation study, so we're gonna know how many towers we're gonna need, because that's the biggest cost that's gonna be out there. This is what it's gonna take to read the whole entire town. Once that's done, then we can get some, some better numbers and try to figure out what it's gonna cost to do a whole town change out.
And I'm guessing that part of, it's not just the expense, it's the time to change out meters. Changing out 600 meters is a lot. Changing out 6,000 meters would be
Well,
almost
you got different
insurmountable.
options, whether you
Yeah.
do them in-house or you contract them out too. It depends on how fast we want everything done, so.
If
So
the
rough,
other
in rough
consider,
terms, doing all the meters is $2.5 million.
All right.
Which is most of a general fund budget for a year. So at any rate, something to look at in the future, but certainly not something to, that shouldn't stop our progress on this discussion. Any other thoughts from the board?
Clearly, I don't think anybody's really excited about having to raise rates, but I think our situation pretty much dictates that we do need to go with some type of increase in our rates, because we have to be looking at the future of the water, and we know we're going to have to look at an alternate source. So I would rather we're proactive at this point instead of 10 years down the line when we say, okay, we're ready to move forward on whether it's a joint facility or doing one on our own. It's just going to be a huge increase at that time, the longer that we wait. So, again, I'm not excited about it. I don't think anybody is, but I almost feel like it's something that our situation is really dictating that we have to do this.
Yeah, and the other thing that I often mention to residents is that this isn't a tax. This
Right.
is you're paying for what you use. Our water needs to be, our water rate needs to be set so that it's the full cost of providing that water to residents. It's our utility, and our engineers have outlined several options that work, and frankly, several options that don't work, for example. And we've seen, I think, at certain states and other areas within our state or school boards that have been confronted with a situation like this, where they knew they would have to make a change and they chose not to, because it's politically easier to do at that point. And I think frankly, it's our responsibility here to plan for the future, 30 years down the road, when none of us are going to be sitting at this table. And nobody will remember that we raised the rates to what they needed to be, but the water fund will be thriving and people will have clean water to drink in our town.
I mean, I mirror what Trustee Spurling said, is that no one's excited about this, but we as a board have collectively, over the last, my tenure here is 5 years, have done the right thing. And the right thing for the residents and for the village is to address this issue head-on, make the tough decisions and do it, as opposed to, as President Brawley alluded to, kicking the can down the road and letting somebody else deal with that problem. I think that, and we're seeing that and experiencing that now in the media. So I think that, I agree. I think it's time, and I support the 5.5 because.
5A?
5A, yeah, the 5A, 5.5 increase, because it just seems to me to be the logical one.
I agree. I'm crossing these out as I go through here, and even on option 2, you have a little dip down from 28, 29, and then you have a significant increase. It looks like 5A is the best option.
And I will recall everybody's attention to our roads program that we went through the same discussion 5 or 6 years ago. And now we have a fully funded roads program that's going to do that's actually sustainable to do our entire village, that everybody that was on the board at the time supported and passed a referendum to do that. So similar along those lines, I think it's important. I also agree with the 5A. I think it's the one that puts us in a good situation. I also don't want to be in a situation where, and I'm sure Michelle has worked in other towns where the rates were not 5.5%, where the recommendation came back much higher, double or triple of that, and then you have a real problem. And frankly, might not get passed at a board meeting, so.
I'm also leaning toward option 5A.
Danny?
Well, I think it looks good on paper now, but what happens after? When you get down to then 2% annual increases, and you got, I won't be here, and some of you guys might, and all of a sudden that guy, at that time, they go, okay, we're not making enough money, let's go back in 2018 when these guys rated 5%, and instead of the 2%, let's make it 5% all the time from now on. But then in the end, this looks good, but we gotta keep it at 2% later on, and I don't know how.
Well, I think that's important along the lines with what Stan was asking for expenses and keeping a solid eye on expenses. And the other thing that I would mention too is we revisit these every 3 or 5 years, water rate study,
Yeah.
3 years, just like we did 3 years ago. And that was before we passed the alternate water supply study, which kind of predicates some of these changes. But it's something we'll track over every 3 years over the next infinity, really, on the water supply.
And I mean, having listened to Director Reddy talk about some of the things with water loss and things that, and ideas that he's seen and experienced, I think that I look forward to seeing some cost savings from the operations side at some point, because I think you have some good, fresh ideas to bring before us. And, you know, this board has been pretty happy with those type of suggestions, and we intend to embrace those. So I look forward to that as well.
I'm pretty sure that if you came up with an idea of tying on to Oswego in the middle of the night somewhere, we could probably pass that one too.
All right. Any other comments or
fine.
questions?
5A.
5A?
5A.
5A?
5A.
5A? 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 Would you like to vote on that tonight or at the next meeting?
Happily.
Let's do it tonight. Let's
Yeah.
get
We're
it
here.
done.
We've talked about this a couple times already.
All right.
Would you
Any
like a
other-
motion to approve ordinance 1817, amending the village water code, representing the 5.5A option, 5.5%
Okay.
increase?
That's a motion?
Yes.
And there's a second. Are there any other holes in this ordinance that we need to specifically mention?
Really thought that was just the rate, right?
The only thing that was taken out was the rate, so.
Okay. All right, so clear direction on that. Is there any discussion on the item?
I'd just like to say that this board, I've always been very happy with how this board handles like the infrastructure, roadway improvement and that sort of thing. We always talk about it, we hear each other out, and we make good, sound decisions for the village of Montgomery. And this is, even though this is a very fiscally conservative board, this needs to be done. This is something we have to do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, call the roll.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
And Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
This carries 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much.
Sorry, Michelle.
Michelle thanks you.
All right, with that, we'll move on to, we don't have items for discussion, anything new or unfinished? I'm
Now,
sure.
hold on, I got a couple. Do you
Okay.
have, do you?
I have one.
Okay, go ahead.
Teresa,
Go
go ahead,
ahead.
you go first.
Okay. My item is for the chief. Prior to you coming on board, it was explained to me that we have agreements with several of our commercial areas that we would be enforcing any truck parking in the parking lots. I'm not sure I know there was a date given to me that anything that was, let's say it was like 2005 or since 2005, it was an automatic agreement that the tractor trailers were not to be parking in the lots. I'm seeing that happening a lot over by Walmart. In fact, they're parking right next to the sign that says no truck parking. And then there starting to be more and more trucks on, in Settlers Landing along Douglas Road, which I think kind of detracts in that area. The other place, and I haven't been recently now, but Ogden Hill, we were seeing some trucks park up there, and I can't say I've seen that recently just because I haven't been up there. But Walmart and Settlers Landing, for sure, like within the last week, 10 days, there's several tractor trailers parking out there. I'd like to see that enforced and ask them to move on, find someplace else to park.
Okay, I will check into those agreements, make sure they're still in force, and we'll go from there.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, Doug?
Two, I would like to thank you for coming, Chief. Our Bristol Kendall Fire Chief has come to grace us with his presence this evening and has hung out for the entire meeting, so we truly appreciate that. So, again, it's very nice to have you come and show an interest in what we have going on here, so thank you. And then also, at a previous board meeting, it had to be about a year ago, I think, we had a gentleman come, Kyle, that came, and they were discussing starting a church.
Yes.
So I attended service yesterday they've been hosting for the last 8 weeks in the Lakewood Creek Clubhouse as an organizational type thing. So they're going to be moving on to the school and having a little bit more formalized type service starting, I think, after Labor Day. So it was nice to see that and to see the involvement from the community and see several people I recognize from the community coming to help develop this, because as he pointed out, with all of our population boom that we've had on the west side and in town, there has been no additional worship here in town. There's been a lot in other towns, but none here. So it's really nice to see them organizing and him cultivating, and it's about the sense of community. So just wanted to recognize that. You know, I followed up on having talked to him previously, and it was a nice group of people to meet with. So it was very nice.
Awesome.
Brian Lane update, please.
I wish Pete were here to see if there's anything new. The last we talked, Rick is saying, no, there's not. We are still waiting on ComEd for final authority, so they have not given us approval.
I've reached out twice now to our liaison with ComEd, who responded the first time that they, were working on that. It sounds like he might be covering more area than what they normally do. But when we had Sylvia Rogowski, I think she was primarily in this area, but I haven't heard back the second time, to be honest with you.
We've been talking about this for a year. This is ridiculous.
Well, we got the construction company ready to go as soon as we can give them the authority. I mean,
And
we
we've
have
made it
everything
through-
in place we need except approval.
Well, we have, I think we have many, if not a dozen of their departments have signed off, and now it's to the actual department that would write the easement or approve the easement.
That's what Pete's reported, is that I think we're through 4 out of the 5 divisions that we need to get through. So we are making progress, but it's slow, obviously, and the last one had to bring them back up to speed again, and they've been pushing them.
That's the first one. Second one, I've had residents ask me about a 4-way stop at Gordon and Concord. I don't know if any other trustees have been asked about that.
I've seen talk about it, but, yeah.
Potentially, if we could look into that. Also, residents have been asking me, there's supposed to be a stoplight installed at Galena and Concord. When is that supposed to take place?
It's supposed to start this fall, and I think it'll be wrapped up in the spring. So it's in this construction season.
ComEd's not involved with this, are they?
We do want to power the lights, so yes.
We do.
But I think that's is it a 3-way agreement with us, Oswego, and Kendall County?
Three-way agreement between the village, Oswego, and Kendall County.
I think that'll improve some.
And there will be
Shared
progress on
costs.
that this fall.
Yeah.
And then I apologize, I didn't have a moment to bring this up with my fellow board members, but every once in a while, I'll push this and I'll ask about this. When we passed the infrastructure roadway improvement, we passed a property tax rebate of, I think it was about 15%, and ended up being $45 for each home. And we made a promise that we were going to keep that, and we were going to try to increase it. I'd like to see if we can increase it and to the $60 mark, another 5%. And I don't know how many homes are partaking in this property tax rebate. I want to say it's less than 3,000. Am I wrong?
Director Van Born would know better.
That is correct.
So 3,000 times 15, or 5, 3,000 times 5 is another.
Times 15.
Times
15
15, yeah, it's 5%. It's about another $45,000. The chief just gave us a third of that with the 13,000.
Yeah, go ask North
So-
Aurora for that.
But
You know,
it's-
and that's not a bad thing to bring up. We can talk about it during our budget, during next year's
Right, and
budget cycle.
that's what I want to do. I just want to bring it up. I want to get it in the minds of the trustees so they can think about it and we can talk about it.
And the other thing too is during the next budget cycle is to look at, and maybe a different option, or first, trying to increase the amount of residents that actually partake in the program. I've gotten at least a dozen voicemails of people saying, I never got my check, which is because I never filled out the form. I know that we're trying to streamline that process of issuing those checks, because that is a decent time commitment for staff to go through that. So it'd be nice to see what the plan is from staff for that going forward in the next budget cycle.
I have a follow-up question to that. Attorney Anderson, would we have to do an amendment then? You're shaking your head no already. No?
Well, I can't recall honestly how you framed the rebate, if you will. If we did it in an ordinance form rather than a motion, yeah, I suppose we would have to amend it. If we didn't, then it's simply a part of your budget process.
Oh, okay, great.
Those are my items. Thank you.
Awesome. Anyone else? All right, with that, future meetings, our next village board meeting will be in this room on Monday, September 10th. With that, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session for two reasons: to discuss collective negotiating matters and litigation where it's probable or imminent.
Second.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling. And Trustee Lee.
I mentioned it. I can't adjourn without. I know, I always do we really need everybody?
I
We
feel
have a
bad.
quorum?
Yeah. Denny, can you poke your head in there? Do you have a master switch on? Cool. All right, with that, I'll call the meeting back to order and entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
And Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Awesome, we're adjourned. Thank you.